Hello, and welcome to Sozo Exchange, the place where professional adults can learn practical English for free. My name is Sarah McKay, and I am your host today. Today's show is full of exciting and interesting things. We'll start by talking to Max Presneill, our featured guest. Max Presneill is an Englishman who lives in Los Angeles. Max owns 2 art galleries in the Los Angeles area and is a very talented artist. Let's begin by watching Max's interview clips. We'll discuss some new expressions that we learned from his footage. We'll then move on to our other segments: body language, slang of the day, and pronunciations. After we've covered all those segments, we'll review everything with a flashcard exercise. Without further ado, let's ask Max our first question. What is your favorite gesture?
Sticking out of the tongue to indicate that you're not being as serious as other people might have thought you were being.
That's a fun answer. Obviously, you have to be a bit cautious as to when and where you use this gesture. The key is that you want to make it clear that you are not serious about what you have just said. Perhaps you should exaggerate your facial expressions when you stick out your tongue, just to let people know that you're not at all serious and just having fun. When Max made the expression, he made a funny face while sticking out his tongue. Remember, Max is from England. We have the same gesture here in the United States, and it means the same thing as it does in England. Let's move on to our next question for Max. Could you tell us a saying that you use often?
Emperor's new clothes. It's a saying to indicate that you shouldn't be fooled by what everyone else is saying if they're incorrect.
I remember reading the story of the Emperor's New Clothes when I was about 6 or 7 years old. It's written by Hans Christian Andersen, and it's about an emperor who loved clothes more than anything. The emperor was conned by 2 swindlers into believing they had made him the most beautiful clothes, but you could only see the clothes if you were very intelligent. The verb con means to defraud, swindle, or trick someone into believing something is true when it is most certainly not true. So the swindlers told him that the clothes were invisible to people that were stupid. Everyone, including the emperor, pretended they could see the emperor's new clothes because they were all afraid of being viewed as stupid. One day, the emperor was parading in front of hundreds of people, and a small child shouted out, "The emperor's not wearing anything! He's naked!" The child was the only person smart enough to be honest about the situation because he wasn't afraid of what people would think of him. Max nicely summed up the meaning of the phrase, "the emperor's new clothes." To sum up means to describe something briefly or quickly recap what something means. Going off what Max said, that phrase, "the emperor's new clothes," is also used to express the idea that truth is often spoken by children or those who are too naive to understand group pressure. For example, the child in the story didn't care about what other people thought, so he didn't ignore the obvious problem of the emperor's nudity. Most often, people use the phrase in this way as a metaphor. When you see a situation where people are collectively making an incorrect statement due to the pressure of the group, you can say, "It's like the emperor's new clothes. The truth is this, but the group pressure makes everybody say that." Okay, we have one more question for Max. What is the most difficult English word for you to pronounce?
Simulacrum, which I always have to think about first.
Simulacrum. This is a good word to remember if you want to sound very intelligent and educated when you speak. It's a tough word for even native English speakers to pronounce and know. Simulacrum is a noun, and it means a vague likeness or something similar to something else. Here is an example of how to use it in a sentence. Although we signed a peace accord with the enemy country, it is a simulacrum of true mutual understanding and peace between the 2 nations. The word sometimes refers to something similar to an original, but in fantasy or imagination, so it doesn't actually exist. It's time to move on to our body language lesson. Today's lesson is about the action of winking one's eye, like this, in the United States. This gesture can show several things, such as understanding, approval, or encouragement. When you are telling an innocent lie or playing a trick on someone, Americans often wink in an exaggerated way. It's almost as if dirt is in your eye, but it gets someone else to play along with your joke. The phrase play along means to go along or act as if you didn't know about the trick being played on someone. In some Asian countries, men generally don't wink at other men, and if a man winks at a woman, it usually indicates his romantic interest in her. In the US, people generally wink at other people, regardless of their genders, without any romantic or sexual implications. They use the wink as a way to say, "I understand you." "Okay, I'm just joking," or "Go ahead." It's neat that you can say these things without using words. Of course, you've probably seen some American movies, usually comedies, where a physically attractive woman winks at a man in a sexy way to get his attention. I guess this situation happens in real life sometimes, but I think it's very rare. When American women make this sexy winking gesture in a real-life situation, they are most likely just being silly. They may be mimicking the seductive gesture because it's usually made by scantily clad women in movies and magazines, and they're just having fun playing with that image. The phrase scantily clad women is a more proper or formal way of describing women that are wearing skimpy clothing. The adjective skimpy means very small. In that context, it means that the women are showing a lot of skin. Our next segment is slang of the day. Today's slang term is an arm and a leg. This expression refers to something that is very costly or expensive. Here's how it's used in a sentence. My new suit cost me an arm and a leg. Obviously, you should not use this expression when you are speaking with someone who has a disability in his arm or leg. That would just be insensitive. By the way, in the United States, it's more politically correct or proper to use the word disabled instead of handicapped. You'll find more and more people in the business world using the word disabled, since handicapped has a negative connotation. Let's move on to our How to Pronounce It segment. We are going to practice the pronunciations of certain English words, which many non-native speakers find difficult. Today we'll use the word wink, which has this w sound that isn't easy for a lot of new English speakers. I would imagine this is particularly tough for German-speaking people. Please watch closely as I use my lips, teeth, jaws, tongue, and facial muscles to make the w sound. Wink. 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 All right, we're nearing the end of our show, and it's time to review all the new expressions and words we've learned today. Remember how we do this? We'll show you a series of flashcards with definitions on them. You should then say the word or phrase that matches that definition out loud. Let's do it. A gesture used to show you aren't really serious, that you're just joking. Sticking out the tongue. A phrase used to show you shouldn't be fooled by the crowd's opinion. The emperor's new clothes. To defraud or trick someone into believing something that isn't true. To con someone. Something with a vague likeness to something else. Simulacrum. A gesture used to show understanding, encouragement, or approval. Winking one's eye. Women who are wearing very little clothing. Scantily clad women. Used to describe something that is very expensive. It costs an arm and a leg. Very nice work on those flashcards, folks. The artwork we showed between the cards was created by our featured guest, Max Presneill. We're just about done today, but first I have another assignment for you. We talked a lot about the emperor's new clothes today. Try to think of an example of the emperor's new clothes in your society. Was there a time when everyone believed something that wasn't true simply because they didn't want to break off from the group's opinion? Give that some thought and come up with an example before our next show. Remember to visit our website at www.sozoexchange.com. You can download a complete transcript of today's show, a study guide, and audio exercises so you can practice on your own. You can also take our online survey at our site. All right, folks, it's been a lot of fun learning with you today. I'll see you next time.